So, okay, the drive is accessing. Let's see if it boots. Nope. So here we are with our crusty Amiga 1000. I thought the drive for this Amiga was working, but it turns out it is intermittent. I tried cleaning it, then I tried aligning it caveman style, but it didn't work very well. I basically gave up. I hate floppy disks and drives and always wind up going with a Gotek, and that's what this video is about. It does turn out that I don't give up so easily, so look forward to a video of me fixing not only this Amiga drive, but a couple of others too, using a more scientific method. But for now, let's see the Gotek mount for the A1000 that I designed. Okay, so when designing a mounts are probably the most difficult thing that I do on 3D design, because getting everything to line up is pretty tough. Plus, the even more difficult is to try to avoid modifying the original case or frame or anything like that. So you're having to design around all that stuff, and it can be pretty difficult. So the idea that I came up with, and I'll throw a screenshot of it, is that I was going to make a little housing for the OLED screen to fit snugly up into the alcove of the floppy drive on the outside, and then to design a mount where I could mount the Gotek itself, and the rotary encoder would be able to be slid through the eject hole, and then I would simply make a large enough knob to cover the eject slot so that it would look somewhat natural. I mean, anybody who knows about Amigas would think it's very unnatural looking, but the main point is to make it usable, to make it look so that it's not completely ugly, and to make it so that it doesn't, you're not modifying the case at all. So this bracket has holes that, with some effort I got them to line up perfectly and get the Gotek. The USB thumb drive is accessible through the floppy slot, along with the two buttons on the front of the Gotek. And then the only other thing is the LED. That's usually the only other thing that passes to the outside, from the inside. And that, obviously, we just need to route that over to the LED activity light, which is already existent on the front panel. And I have a little bit of trouble with that. I'll put that in the video too in a minute here. But anyway, so this is my design. It's completely original from scratch. Somebody on Thingiverse did have a design for a Gotek, and it was somewhat similar, except the OLED was peeking out of the hole of the A1000, the drive hole. And if you know anything about my other videos or how I design things, I don't like the idea of having the OLED, kind of visible, sneaking out through the disc slot. I'd like to have it externally somewhere where you can really see it. So so that's my basic design in it. Once I think I did 4 prints total before I was satisfied. So you print it once, you print this once, you usually find dimensions that are a little bit off. You can measure them all you want, but you're going to be like a millimeter off, and then that's, you're going to have to reprint it for other reasons, so you might as well tweak it. So you got to get the holes for the cage that holds the drive lined up better. And I did notice once I had my third iteration that I needed to bolster the rotary encoder mount. Just to make it so that if you push on it or whatever, it doesn't flex too much. Because you do push on it to select something. It's also a push button switch as well as a rotary encoder. The only thing I'm not quite satisfied with was the fact that when you put the thumb drive in, this does flex a bit. But you can see how I did bolsters and gussets all over the place. You know, and that was, again, that was after the third iteration. I gusseted everything, all of the posts. This one you don't need gusseting, it's just a placeholder. There is no hole in the Gotek for it, but I just thought it should have a fourth spot for it to rest against. But all the other ones are, you know, gusseted and bolstered in both axes. And yeah. So, and then we have some relief here. This is going to be for a specific rotary encoder that I have linked in the description of my other videos. Hopefully I remember to do it in this video too. You know, when I upload this to Thingiverse, I'll have the parts list also. And anyway, so yeah, that's it. So let's go take a look at it. Let's first fix our LED that we had a problem with, and then we'll mount this in the A1000, and we'll show you how it looks. So here's my solution. I just shaved. I pulled off the other contact and filed the top of this to give me something nice to glue to. Underneath this orange, brownish orange thing is actually an LED that's glued to the top of the old LED. And then the legs of this LED are just going this way. And of course I covered this with heat shrink because I don't want all the light leaking out. New LEDs are pretty bright, so there'll be some light leaking out from the back. I don't think that'll be a problem. But this is basically my repair of the LED for the, because I think it was the anode that broke off, the red. So it works pretty well. Here's the final product of designing an Amiga 1000 Gotek mount. Basically just a cage to screw the Gotek circuit board to, and a place to mount the rotary encoder. And then the separate piece is the front bezel that fits right inside this area. So let me put this back together and we'll see how it looks. The hardest part in designing something like this is getting everything to line up properly, and really what it's all about is getting it to line up with the front bezel correctly. You know, because we have the rotary encoder sticking out through here, and we have the thumb drive that we want to slide in here, and the buttons, which are optional, because if there's a rotary encoder you don't necessarily need the buttons, but I left them. They're right here, and preserving the circuit board as much as possible without having to make any extra modifications, and of course being considerate of the Amiga and not making any modifications of the Amiga as well. It can get a little difficult. Once I got everything designed and put together, I couldn't fit the ribbon cable in because the ribbon cable is wide, really wide. When you fit it onto the Gotek, it's wider than the Gotek, and I pushed the Gotek as far this way as I could because of where I wanted the buttons to line up. You know, I wanted the buttons to be the center of the drive. And so, you know, this is where compromises come into play. It pretty much does fit in here, although the screw on this side, the screw that holds this side of the mount in, is not turned in really tightly. And if we're talking about, you know, sheet metal screws in plastic, you know, they kind of bind, they stick by themselves, so I think that's just fine. So this Gotek has the regular modifications, you know, a piezo speaker, a rotary encoder, an OLED, plus only one extra modification, and that's to extend the LED out to a connector. Let me show you that in a second here. So what I did here is I didn't have anything necessarily that matched the connector, and I wanted to preserve the stock connector in case somebody wants to put a 1010 drive back in here. So what I did was I just took two leads from actually the same LED that I repaired this with. I just took the cut off leads and soldered them onto the end of a couple of wires, and if all you have to do is match red to red, and it pushes in there, and it should be good to go. So now just going to push this OLED through the hole here. Let's go the other way so I don't bend the wires too much. Should go either way. There we go. Just make sure our wires are kind of going where we want them to. You have to push the excess up in there. It's a little fiddly. You see what I'm doing? Oh no, actually the LED modification I did, I think there's an easy solution for that. It's actually hitting on the edge of the drive there, so let's just gently pop this out and spin it around. Then we're going to have to bend the wires the other way. Can't do this too many times. And actually I should have went down a little bit. Don't break. Still feels stiff. Okay. Okay, that should keep it out of our way. Yeah, that was the problem. I think in my A1000, I think one or both of the LEDs were broken, and I had to do something similar. I haven't put any of the screws in yet, but we can definitely test fit it. And we got our knob. Yeah. And let's plug her in and give it a test. Show you. Should fit. Just have to push. All right. Amiga test kit. Let's turn this light off. It's actually making things worse. Here you go. See, so there. Yeah, I mean, you can optionally try to paint these to match, but you know, frankly, I think it looks okay the way it is. There's only a couple images on this. There's only two. Amiga test kit and Workbench 1.3 on this thumb drive. Anyway, and the thumb drive is, I mean, this OLED mount is just sized correctly so that it just kind of presses in there. You don't have to worry about, shouldn't have to worry about it coming out, but if it does, you can just push it back in. So yeah, that's it.
you.